morning and welcome to the show. The topic this morning is Dr. Martin Luther King, and we're talking to Dr. LBaldwin, who is an associate professor in the Department of Religious Studies at Vanderbilt University, and also the author of a new book on Dr. Martin Luther King called There Is a Bomb in Gilead. And let me welcome you to the show this morning, Dr. Baldwin.
Thank you, Doug.
Dr. Baldwin, in anticipation of the celebration of the federal holiday, the 6th federal holiday, we'd like to devote this morning to Dr. Martin Luther King and not only your book, but some of the other scholarship and some of the other authors dealing with Dr. Martin Luther King. Why don't you start us off by, first of all, giving us some information relative to who Dr. Martin Luther King was and his place in history.
I think we have to see Dr. King as one of the great human rights advocates in history. He was a person who came into this country and who traveled throughout the world trying to sensitize people to the importance of respecting one another, of being in community with one another, of being at peace with one another. I think his place is very secure in history. As you know, a lot of revisionist scholarship is coming out now, challenging Dr. King's moral integrity, his scholarly integrity. But I think his position in history is quite secure as one of the great men who came to teach us about the importance of brotherhood, of sisterhood, of community, and of being at peace with one another.
Now, you've done quite a bit of work in the area of King scholarship. Why don't you give us, and you mentioned, I think, some of the most recent scholarship dealing with Dr. King. Why don't you give us an overview of some of the important scholarship and then say something about your own book dealing with Dr. King and when that book will be produced and whatnot.
Since the 1980s, the mid-1980s, scholars have focused a great deal on the person of Dr. King, his character, his leadership in the civil rights movement. The book by David Guerra called Bearing the Cross, which appeared in 1987. Ralph Abernathy's book, And the Walls Came Tumbling Down, which appeared in 1989. These books raised serious questions about Dr. King's moral standards, about his character and about his fitness as a leader. The issue of King's alleged womanizing, of his alleged plagiarism, these issues are raised in the works of scholars like Guerra and Abernathy, and also in a more recent book by James Cone called Martin and Malcolm on America, Dream or Nightmare. So I see a kind of revisionist scholarship out. This is what I characterize it as, a kind of revisionist scholarship, in that the focus has been on King's character since the appearance of Guerra's book. Now, my book is an attempt to place King in proper perspective. That is, to view him as one who was born and raised in the South, as one who was exposed to Southern culture, and as one who was exposed to the black church, the extended family, and the black community. I've tried to talk in my book, There Is a Bomb in Gilead, about how these particular forces shaped his life. And I have argued essentially that the black experience and the black Christian tradition were the most important sources in the shaping of his life, his thought, his vision, and his efforts to translate the beloved community into practical reality. In other words, in order to understand King's interpretation and appropriation of Gandhi, of Reinhold Niebuhr's Christian realism, of social gospelism, of Western philosophical categories, in order to understand his interpretation and appropriation of these particular sources, one has to take into account the extent to which the black experience and the black Christian tradition shaped his life and his thought and his vision.
Very good. You've mentioned a number of very, very significant religious leaders and thinkers. And I think understanding that Dr. King is thereby connected with such leaders and such thinkers sort of give us a larger picture of Dr. Martin Luther King, certainly more than just what a civil rights leader. He's one of the most important thinkers of his time. Why don't you expand upon his relationship with some of the earlier theologians and prophets?
Yes, Dr. King was exposed very early in his life to some of the major ethicists and theologians in this country. He attended Morehouse College and he was one of the students of George Kelsey, Dr. Benjamin E. Mays, both of whom were great thinkers. At Crozer Theological Seminary in Chester, Pennsylvania, he was exposed to Dr. George Washington Davis, who was a personalistic philosopher and theologian. And at Boston University, he was exposed to great thinkers like L. Harold DeWolf and Edgar S. Brightman. Scholars who helped him to refine his ideals, scholars who helped him to come up with an intellectual structure, a conceptual framework for articulating his thoughts and ideals. So I think when you study Dr. King's role, not only as a civil rights leader, but as a world figure, as a religious leader, you have to take into account these philosophical and theological sources, in addition to his exposure to black culture and the black Christian tradition.
Very good. I think all would admit that Dr.